Hello, ciao everybody, welcome to this open talk. I want to welcome all of you here. I know you're following us from all over the world. Some of you I've already had the chance to meet. Some of you are alumni from our previous editions of the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program. Some of you will be our participants from the upcoming edition, so I really look forward to meeting all of you. And what are we going to do today? Today we're going to host this open talk about food waste management. It's hosted by the European Institute of Innovation for Sustainability in collaboration with Too Good To Go. And we're going to see how to go towards a more sustainable future. So, without wasting more time, how is today going to be structured? I'm now going to introduce the first guest speaker of today. She'll have something to tell us, of course, about her research. Then we're going to have our second special guest talk to us about his experience. And later on, I will briefly introduce the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program. And after that, we'll leave room to your Q&A session with the experts. So I will start by now introducing our first guest speaker. I'm talking about Ludovica Principato. Ludovica is a PhD postdoc researcher at Roma University. She is specialized in food waste. She was one of the first writing about this topic at an academic level, and she is a sustainability advisor for several food companies, and she now teaches at Roma University in the management department. So, Ludovica, happy to welcome you and to have you with us.
Hello, Sveva, and hello, everyone. I'm glad to stay here and very excited to talk about this topic that I'm researching since, almost more than 10 years now.
Great. I look forward to hearing you, so I think we all do. I will then leave you the stage, and I will see you in about 10 minutes.
Sure, thank you, Sveva. So today together we decided to talk about the specific aspects of food loss and waste. That is what happens at retail level and why also for food producers, so for companies, it is worthwhile to tackle the phenomenon of food waste. But before that, I would like just to give you some quick data on the phenomenon. So globally, about 1/3 of the global food production gets lost of waste every year at some level of the food supply chain. And the FAO says that the problem is both at consumer level, but also in other parts of the food supply chain. So just to give some definition, we talk about food losses when we talk about the first part of the food supply chain, that is from the agricultural phase up to the post-harvest and transformation up to the retail level. And according to FAO, globally, 14% of the total amount of food waste are food losses. And considering the food waste happens at retail level and at consumer level. That means in our households and when we eat out, like at restaurant level or any other type of food service level. And according to a very recent report by the UN Environment Programme, we waste 17% of the total amount of food loss and waste. And the important news about that is that it's a global problem. So before, we used to think that food waste was basically a problem of the so-called global north, but actually it is not really true. So it's a very important problem that we need to tackle. And food loss and waste have several causes, of course, and lead to several impacts. So just to mention some, we know that considering the economic cost associated to that, which encompass not only the money lost in producing this food that gets wasted, but also the environmental cost and the social cost. Every year, the phenomenon costs globally $2.6 trillion. And considering the environmental impacts, the data are kind of even worse. So if we consider the global greenhouse gas emissions, it accounts for the 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And if we could make just a comparison, so if we think about food loss and waste as a country, it could be the third global greenhouse gas emitters after China and USA. So the amount is really huge, and it is really important to tackle it. It also consumes, of course, water. So the water used for growing this food that ultimately gets wasted is similar or equivalent to the volume of the annual flow of the Volga River. And basically it uses also the field for growing this food, and it's about the 30% of the global field for growing food. So the numbers are astonishing. And today, as I said, because we must talk about the consumer issues, so the consumer behavioral issues. But today I want just to give you this little talk about what happens at company level and large-scale distribution level. So according to the literature, the main causes that lead to food waste, especially at large-scale distribution, are several. So first of all, we can mention weak storage methods or damaged packaging, or overstocking and unpurchased foods, or also some over-preparing of food. And this is basically due to difficulty in determining sales volumes. And then there is another point that is very important and in some ways affecting us as consumers. So there are high aesthetical standards required in these supermarkets. And for instance, we as consumers, we like kind of nice food. We do not like ugly food that is perfectly edible, so like croquette carrot or bruised apple. So basically sometimes they do not even appear in the shelves because of this kind of aesthetical standards, which is such a shame, of course. And considering the main causes that lead to food waste at company level, I can mention some of them. There are, of course, several along the supply chain. So there are some avoidable, but sometimes also unavoidable food waste in the fields. So just think about the pasta production. So for the pasta production, we do not use all the wheat. Of course, there is a part of wheat that do not enter in the production of the pasta. And this is an unavoidable food waste that ultimately gets wasted. And the most, companies that are involved into reducing food waste, for instance, can use this unavoidable food waste into other supply chains, like for animal feeding or to use as energy. And this is very important because it, in some ways, it follows the line of circular economies. So this is very important to mention. And then sometimes there is waste during the processing phase or some damaged packaging also. So food that is perfectly edible, but during the processing stage gets damaged. And in this way, for instance, company can do some agreements in order to redistribute these damaged packaging that maybe will not go into supermarkets, but can give to people in need, for instance, for free, of course. And then also at company level, sometimes we have excessive production or unsold. And another point that for sure we will mention, there is the big problem of date labeling, but this will be for the next speaker. And just to quickly go, so why it is worthwhile for companies to invest money in activities that try to reduce their food waste. And there are, of course, some financial and non-financial benefit. Let's touch first as a first thing, the financial benefit. So there is a study says that for every dollar invested in the reduction of food loss and waste for companies, and this kind of companies can be food producers, but also restaurant level, the company can realize a return on this investment up to $14. So it is worthwhile from a financial point of view. And then we can also say that there are other benefits, like avoiding the cost of buying food as ingredient or directly for sale that previously has been lost or wasted without being sold, first of all. And then it reduces the costs of management and warehouse of the products. And in general, there could be a greater operational efficiency. But I can mention, to finish, also some non-financial benefits of investing in food loss and waste reduction for companies and retailers. So, for instance, first of all, we can have a better relationship with our stakeholders up and down the supply chain. We can also have, in some ways, a better reputation if we are able, of course, to communicate, for instance, in our CSR reports, all our endeavor in the battle against food waste. And of course, we can have important environmental impacts that are reduced. So we can reduce the environmental impact of the company in terms of, for instance, water footprint or carbon footprint. And in general, I can say that we can have a better community goodwill of the company. And if the companies, of course, do some important communication, also internal communication, so to their employees, there can be a better engagement of their employees. So it is really, really important to tackle the phenomenon also at this level.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ludovica. I would say you've warmed up the stage, and we'll look forward to hearing more about it during the Q&A session, which I'm sure is going to be full of curiosities from our audience. Since you're here and you're the scientific co-director of the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program, I would take this occasion to talk a bit about the course, but also about the institute. So EIIS, as the European Institute of Innovation for Sustainability, we do cover three main areas, three main business areas. We do research, we do consultancy for big companies, but mostly we do education. So we have a series of certificate programs that are related to innovation for sustainability, and one of them, I have to say my favorite, but that doesn't count, is the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program. So we know that you are the co-director of the course. I am, yes, I haven't introduced myself actually. My name is Sveva Ciapparoni, and I am the coordinator of the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program. I will not steal more time because I will tell you more about it later. For now, Ludovica, I will say see you later to you, and I will introduce the second guest of today, but we will meet again for the Q&A session, Ludo.
Fantastic. See you very soon.
Ciao. Thanks. All right, so the moment has come to introduce our second guest speaker of today, and I am talking about Philippe Schuler. Philippe is the Global Impact Manager of Too Good To Go. I am sure many of you know about it, and he's gonna tell us more about what Too Good To Go does and how they create impact in the food waste sector. Basically, he ensures that the company creates both direct and indirect impact across the 5 pillars in the fight against food waste. But he'll tell us more about it. So I'm happy to welcome Philippe on stage with us.
Thank you very much, Sveva. Yes, hello. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly. Thanks for being with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So Philippe, I will leave room to you to tell us more about what you do at Too Good To Go and to tell us more about concrete initiatives that consumers can adopt to actually have an impact starting from their homes.
Of course, I'll be very happy to do that. And first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and to being part of this on this very important topic. Food waste is really a topic, just like Ludovica, I cannot say 10 years, but 6 years on my side that have really got me out of bed every single morning because it is a massive issue. I think Ludovica pictured it very, very well. Is that you look left and right, all the different issues that we're seeing with our planet and our environment and humanity in general, everything can be tied down to the food system, and yet we're wasting so much food everywhere we look, from the start of the supply chain all the way to the end. But the good news is, and this is really what I want to talk about with you, is that there are solutions out there. We can do something about it. And I think that is really the positive and uplifting kind of message that I can bring to everyone. And the thing is that we all have a role to play in this. We cannot point fingers at supermarkets or point fingers at politicians or point fingers just at ourselves. We all have to work hand in hand to make things work. And ultimately, each and every one of us has a certain tasks to do and certain things that we can do on a daily basis to do something about food waste. So when it comes to Too Good To Go, I'm the Global Impact Manager. I've been part of the company for over 3 years. And what we are trying to do with Too Good To Go is really, first of all, to be at the forefront to fighting this massive issue that we call food waste. And we are a social impact company that is really trying to drive both direct and indirect impact by building a movement against food waste. So really to make sure that everybody across all segments of society take food waste seriously. And the most direct way we try to do that is by using technology, by basically connecting businesses such as restaurants, bakeries, hotels, manufacturers, even food producers that have surplus food and don't want to throw it away, but want to offer it at a reduced price for consumers. And so what we allow them to do is to upload this food onto our platform, and basically through a magic bag, which is then made up of certain surplus food, which would have anyways gone to the bin at the end of the day, is then able to be saved by consumers in the neighborhood. So you can download the app for free across 17 different countries, across Europe and also North America in both US and Canada. And through the app, you're able to find your restaurant in the neighborhood that is making sure, doesn't want to waste all that food, but you're able to go and pick it up at a reduced price. And the way we kind of see it is that this magic bag concept and this concept of basically connecting businesses with surplus with consumers allows basically for this win-win-win solution. The big win for consumers is that they are able to take action on food waste by really encouraging them to go out of their sofa, go and pick up a magic bag, go save edible and beautiful food that was about to go to waste, but at the reduced price. And they also discover new places in their neighborhood. So it's really, some people even call it kind of like a Google Maps for food, which is extremely exciting and very uplifting to hear. But you can really see, different places that are fighting food waste, and really you can do something about it. The second win, and I think Ludovica pictured it very nicely as well, is that wasting food is also wasting money. And ultimately, no business wants to end up wasting money. So they also don't want to waste any food. And what we allow them to do is basically connect them with consumers that they would otherwise not have been able to reach, and to create that extra revenue. And the third win is, of course, for the environment, because of all the resources that have gone into producing that food that would end up going to waste. So that is ultimately, how we as a company generate revenue. We are a profit-making company. We are generating all of that revenue. But ultimately, what we are trying to do then with that revenue is to create bigger impact. And that is really what I'm trying to amplify and accelerate on the global level. And we have different local teams as well across the different countries who are then looking at how can we raise awareness even further across the community to make sure that everybody is fighting food waste. And ultimately, in Europe in itself, the vast majority of food that is going to waste is wasted in our very own kitchens. It's not at the farm level. Of course, there's food waste there, and there's also at distribution level, but the vast majority is at the very end of the supply chain. And very often, all of that food that is going to waste could be avoided. It's sometimes different levels of different actions that come to play that cause a lot of that food to end up going to waste. And ultimately, I think if you really break it down to why so much food is going to waste in our kitchens, is that we have lost the respect for food. And the way I kind of try to picture that in the best way possible, how have we lost that respect, is through the 3 A's. So the first A is abundance. So if you go, for example, to the supermarket, you will always have full shelves. We know we're extremely lucky to never have really faced scarcity in a certain way, at least not in the global north, as Ludovica mentioned as well. So, we are able to go into the supermarket any time of the day. We can always get whatever we like. And ultimately, that abundance makes us also value food less because it's always available to us. And so if we are missing a certain item, we can throw the other one away and buy a new one. And this abundance definitely causes a lot of food to go to waste. The second one is that on average, part of our income, we're only spending around 10% of our monthly income on food, which is extremely low if you could look at it in comparison to what we spend on luxuries, travel, rent, all these kind of bigger things as well. And we're spending less and less money on food in that sort of way as well. And that's also because we don't really see the value in food anymore. And it is very often as well, extremely cheap as well. And the third one is association. So what I mean here, and I think this is probably the biggest reason why a lot of food is going to waste in our kitchens, is that we are completely dissociated from where food is coming from. Back in the day, you used to go to the farm, you used to look at the farmer in his eyes and be able to see, okay, this is how much tears and sweat and resources went into producing that food. But nowadays we go to the supermarket and we have no idea where it's coming from. We don't know the traveling it went through, the amount of resources it went into, because we don't have that linkage of where the actual source of the food is coming from. And because we don't have that linkage, we're also more prone to waste it. So I think those are the main reasons why a lot of food is end up going to waste. But the beautiful part of it all is that in order to do something about it, it's really not rocket science. All it takes is really for us to change our own behaviors at home. So to really twist and really try to change our own habits when we're cooking, when we're buying food, when we're storing food, all these different things that we're doing on a daily basis in our kitchens have an impact on how much food is going to waste. So the first thing that I can tell you, for example, is to always plan ahead, to have, of course, your shopping list and to write down your shopping list and not forget it. I think I'm one of those examples that does a shopping list and then goes to the supermarket and is like, oh my God, I forgot my shopping list. Of course, then you're going to overbuy. You're going to start buying things that you don't need. Or if you don't look at your inventory and don't put a shopping list together, then you might buy things that you actually already have in-house. And I think that is definitely not the right way forward, because ultimately we'll have way too much food at home. I think one thing that I can definitely also recommend is when you're looking at your fridge, kind of see it a bit like logistics, first in, first out. So that means whatever is left in your fridge, don't overfill it, but instead try to see, okay, what can I buy or what can I bring from the back of the fridge, bring it to the front, and all the new items go at the back of the fridge. So you make sure that the old items are eaten up as well very, very quickly. And then, of course, as well, you should see leftovers as something beautiful. I think leftovers, just the name leftovers, it's like, oh my God, I'm having leftovers. That's not great. That's not very sexy. That's what am I going to do with this? But ultimately, you should cherish these leftovers. You can freeze them up. You can share with somebody else. You can repurpose them or remix them into something completely new. We as Too Good To Go, we created our own recipe book. I can show it to you, where we actually created like a whole lot of different recipes that people are able to download and to see, if I have a bit of parsley left in my fridge, what can I do with it? If I have bread that is stale, what can I end up doing with it? I think there's so many solutions out there that people can use to repurpose food into something special again. And for me, the biggest topic of all within Too Good To Go, and I think for good reason, is, as Ludovica mentioned, is date labeling. Because still nowadays, a lot of people rely completely on the date that it says on the food produce. And on Europe specifically, we have two different dates. The first one is a use-by date. The use-by date, was introduced because of the salmonella outbreak years and years ago, where basically a lot of people got sick and they wanted to make sure, particularly for items such as meat and fish, that people follow these dates. And ultimately here, what I would say is, yes, you should definitely follow those dates because they are there for health reasons. But the vast majority of food produce that is out there has a best before date. And that best before date has absolutely nothing to do with food safety. Very often, food businesses come up with these dates, and they are just there to kind of show people that that's the optimal quality, that they can make sure that's the optimal quality until that date you can eat it. But often you can eat it weeks or months. Sometimes items such as beer, cereals, you can eat it months afterwards before it even having to waste it. But the problem is that a lot of people are relying on that date. And so that's why we started to take action on it. So even 10% of all the food that is going to waste in the European Union, for example, is down to date labels. And so what we did as Too Good To Go is to say, okay, well, we're working with a lot of partners out there. We're working with the likes of Nestle, Danone, big retailers such as Carrefour, Coop, who have a lot of produce out there on their shelves. So how about we use their food produce to bring across a message that people should start using their senses? And so we created, and I can show it to you, and maybe because a lot of people are tuning in also in Italy, I brought in some tomato pomodoro here, as you can see. So that's something amazing to store. And this can last forever, honestly. And yet it has a best before date. So what we did here, we created, and I can show it to you here, we created this label here that ultimately suggests that you should use your nose, your mouth, and your eyes to judge whether food is still edible or not. You're not going to die by just taking a small taster. You can see often, if there's mold on it or if it's acidic, then you should no longer eat it. But ultimately, very often, the food is still perfectly edible. And what we're trying to do with this label is to educate people that often, these dates are just indicative, and that you can use your senses to make sure that nothing goes to waste. And we have done so across over 4,000 different produce items, and are now over 1 million different products across different shelves in 12 different countries who have this label. Which is extremely exciting. And we are not stopping there. We are now also talking to the EU legislative framework with the Farm to Fork strategy, who are looking into this as well, and really giving this as a best practice of what people can do in order to educate consumers going forward in around date labeling. Lastly, before I, of course, give all of you a word if you want to ask questions, one thing that we also did with Too Good To Go is not only educating consumers of today, but also thinking about the consumers of tomorrow. Because ultimately, I think that's the most exciting part of all, is that we are starting, to really wake up to the climate crisis. We are starting to wake up of all the different things that are going wrong. And I think it's extremely important to also think about the younger generations and equip them with the right tools, the right things, the right mindset to be able to take action. And that's why we also play a massive role in helping schools to bring food waste on a different level as well. So in France, we created a curriculum that is basically free and downloadable by teachers. It's teacher guides, board games, canteen posters that schools are able to implement, and we tested it in 10 different schools from the summer all the way to February this year to see what kind of people, what they were into and how they were able to use it. And we got amazing feedback, and we can now say that over 1,000 different schools in France are going to be able to use this on scale. So it doesn't have to be anybody involved, only the kids and the teachers, and they can all be able to play these different games, raise awareness for the issue in class, in the canteen, and also be able to take that back home. Because ultimately, I don't have any kids yet, but I know that people who do have kids probably will echo what I will say, is that, parents listen to their kids. And I think if we can impact and influence kids and educate them, ultimately they will also help us to educate their parents. And I think that's kind of a way which we're trying to do as well. So really bringing those messages across to kids who will then become extremely energetic about it, and hopefully then also be able to share with their parents. And I think that is something of a key that we are trying to do more and more, these kind of inspiration sessions with kids. And lastly, because also maybe there's viewers in Italy, is what we released last week is a manual for kids, basically that is now available across different libraries in schools by Too Good To Go within Italy. And you basically have all the different tips and tricks, which I basically just talked about now, and make it gamified by involving your kids and really enjoying them part of the food waste problem. So that's all in all. I think I could continue for hours, but I think I'll leave it here for now. Ultimately, my message is that we can all do something about it, and I think it is time to do it right now.
Thank you so much, Philippe. I actually didn't know about many of the things you mentioned, and I will ask you something straight away. How has the idea of the book come up to you? Like and in how many countries have you launched it, actually? Because I'm interested in buying it.
So you can buy it, Sveva, because it's only available in Italy so far. And it's actually a publishing company in Italy who contacted us and said, you know, we want to kind of produce these books for kids and on sustainability. And we love the story of Too Good To Go. We love what you are talking about. Can we include it in a book? And for us, it was completely free. You know, we gave them our knowledge, our expertise, and our tools, and they produced a book for us. So it's an amazing collaboration. And people can buy it on Amazon, on different platforms, and it's available in libraries as well for the kids.
Super, super. I think that should be given to children in school, actually, but maybe we'll get there, hopefully at some point. So thanks, Philippe. Oh, we have some comments already. A really impressive project with labeling. Congratulations, says Kate. Hi, Kate. Nastasia is asking if you can come to Brazil.
I hope so.
You
One
remember,
day, yes.
Philippe, during one of the live sessions from the previous edition of the Food and Sustainability course, I remember there were lots of participants asking you to go to countries that you're not there yet. So exciting. I think there was another comment that I didn't have time to read. Maybe it could have been nice. Thank you, Philippe. I love the educational aspect of Too Good To Go's work, especially at school level. Ciao, Lara. Much needed.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Philippe, we want to see Too Good To Go in schools as a next step.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Thanks, Philippe. We will see you again for the Q&A session. And I will now briefly talk about the Food and Sustainability Certificate Program, since we've had the honor to have today the co-director of the course, Ludovica Principato, and one of our experts from our faculty, Philippe Schuler. I will take 2 minutes to talk to you guys about it, since food waste is definitely one of the main pillars that we cover during the program of the course. So the certificate program is about to start with its 4th edition in September, and we already have 150 foodies community from the first 3 editions of the course. They all come from different countries. We've reached over 40 countries. I know that some of you are following us. We miss you, guys, but we're always on touch on the digital campus. We've sometimes met during our EIIS cafes. So the community will keep growing and growing, and after each edition, many more alumni will join us. So the course is structured in 10 modules. It lasts 3 months. Once a week, we will be meeting for 1 hour and a half. For our live session. So during the live session, you will have the chance to directly talk to the experts who will join us, and you'll get the chance to ask them questions live. So you can share your doubts, your path with them, ask them for advice, and about what they've been talking about in the video recording. Also, you'll have the chance to interact with the other participants, so you'll be live with them through the chat. You can comment on the live session. We've had the honor to have with us during the previous sessions Jeffrey Sachs, Massimo Bottura, Daniel Nierenberg, Raji Patel as well. The faculty of experts really ranges from the most diverse fields in the food sector. We have directors from UN food-related organizations like FAO, like IFAD, like World Food Programme, but also managers of great food companies like Nestlé, like Starbucks. Of course, great in terms of numbers and dimensions and impact. But yes, so absolutely the possibility to talk to these experts is one of the perks, together with becoming part of this huge community that will keep growing. You will get to meet passionate foodies from all over the world. Each of them has their own story, their own plans for the future. So this networking opportunity will also be able to maybe open new paths to you to share projects and maybe be a business occasion to develop your future initiatives. We will get to meet weekly, but besides the academic part, we'll also have appointments every 2 weeks to get to know each other better. So we're going to meet during our EIIS cafes, which are informal moments where we'll get to discuss about articles or about our experiences, the activities that we're bringing on, future projects. So it's going to be a way to really, as if we were going for a coffee together and to feel close despite the distance. And last but not least, you will be tackling a huge challenge because the course has an extremely hands-on approach. It's very concrete. You will see that we follow the challenge-based learning approach. So you will be divided into teams based on your backgrounds, and the criteria will be diversity. So you'll be working with participants from different work fields, but sharing the same passion. They'll be far from you. They'll have different geographical backgrounds as well, different ages. But with them, you'll be analyzing the food system of a G20 country, and you'll be able to propose possible solutions to increase the sustainability of their food system. So you'll be accompanied by us throughout this whole process, and you will have a dedicated mentor accompanying you throughout, along the way. They will be our alumni from the previous editions, and I say hi to all of you guys. They will assist you, and at the end of the program, you'll have the chance to present your projects on the occasion of the graduation ceremony. There will be a jury of experts to evaluate the projects, and the winning team will have access to paid accommodation for the team of site, which will be held next spring in Italy. And that's going to be the chance to meet in person with all of you and with the previous editions participants as well. So I really hope to have the chance to see most of you on that occasion, but first of all, during the course, starting in September. And as you can see, if you want to find out a bit more about it, you can scan the QR code and download the brochure of the course, or directly book a call with me, and I'll be happy to tell you everything you need to know and answer to your curiosities. But now, I would like to leave room for your questions, for our experts, and for your comments, for your curiosities. So I would like to introduce today's Q&A session. All right, here we are back again with Ludovica and Philippe. Thank you guys for being with us. And yes, I'm sure we have lots of questions, but first I can ask one myself to warm up the session. I was wondering, that's a question for Philippe. Do you know, I think you do, but anyways, how much food Too Good To Go has managed to avoid wasting in the past year, or in the past years? Maybe there's been a development throughout the years.
Yes, there has definitely been some developments, to say the least. We started 6 years ago in Denmark. Now we're in 17 different countries, and overall we have saved over 147 million kilos of food being wasted, so 147 million meals in total, which is an astonishing number. And alone last year we were able to save 55 million kilos of food being from going to waste. So yes, the numbers are insane, to be very honest. And if you think about the amount of magic bags that we're selling every second, we're selling 3 magic bags every second, every single day around the world. So it is impact at scale more and more. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's need of this growth. So hopefully the impact will keep increasing. And Ludovica, I have a question for you as well, but I see that many comments are coming up, so I will save it for later. So in the meantime, I have a question for you from Mirko. Mirko would like to ask you something. Let's see. Okay, Mirko asks, my son, who's 10 years old, is asking, in which country is the biggest amount of food waste?
Wow, that's a great question. So, of course, the country that has the biggest amount of food waste is, in general, the biggest country. I can say I don't like rankings in general, so I can tell you some of the countries where there are most of food waste. So the USA, of course, have a huge amount of food waste as a volume, but it's impressive to say that also Saudi Arabia has one of the hugest amount of food waste per capita. So that means maybe the volume in total are, of course, less than the US because there are less people, but the per capita food waste, like in Saudi Arabia or in other developing countries, are huge too. So this means the fact that I said before, the food waste, it's really a global issue. And as I can say now that the food poverty is increasing worldwide, we need to make a stop.
Thank you, Ludovica. Thank you, Mirko. And congratulations to your son who is following us. So I have another question for Philippe. Linus wants to ask you something. Let's see what he'd like to know. What challenges has Too Good To Go experienced when introducing the solutions to restaurants and partners? Interesting question.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, many of them should listen to what Ludovica said at the start, that a lot of people, a lot of businesses don't really realize yet of how much food is going to waste. And often in their calculations, they already account for the food waste. So what I mean with that is that they know every day that they are about to waste 10%, and that's something of their business as usual. That's something they always have done in the past. So they don't really see it as food waste. They just see it as a circumstance that they can't do anything about. And very often they don't measure how much that actually represents. And so what we really tried to do is to really raise awareness for that, to tell them, well, ultimately, it doesn't have to be this way. You're putting a lot of resources into this. You're putting a lot of energy, a lot of money into producing this food. You can do something about it. It doesn't have to be part of that 10% that you usually always throw away. And I think that just is a mindset change, I think, for a lot of businesses and restaurants and partners in general, which we, of course, have to deal with and which we are fighting with as well.
Thank you. We have another question from Sob Ma. Philippe, that's for you as well. How do you convince big players to come, like fast-moving consumer goods and so on?
So I would say, pretty similar also to the smaller ones, I would say. Of course, there the numbers are even bigger. But yet, I think what is the biggest asset for them at the moment is that they know that it's required. Sustainability is no longer something good to have, it's a must-have. A lot of them, want to take action in different ways, and food waste often, because that's what they produce, that's their core of their business, is where they can create the biggest amount of impact. And they are really realizing that, and that's why they want to start taking action. So it's both for using our application, but also in terms of fast-moving consumer goods. There we're working with the likes of Unilever, Danone, Nestle, etc., because they also see the need in themselves to educate consumers and to also show to them that they care and that they're also trying to do something about it. And state labeling is definitely one initiative where we allow them basically to do exactly that, to have that label on their produce, to be able to educate consumers going forward. And they are definitely seeing now more and more that businesses need to take on these challenges, that it's a massive opportunity and that something needs to be done. That it's required by consumers, it's required by their shareholders, it's no longer enough to sit back. So ultimately, that's why more and more are starting to reach out to us, which is fantastic.
Exactly. As Ludovica was mentioning earlier, there's both financial and non-financial benefits that need to be considered. So thanks, Philippe. I now have a question. I know that Davide wants to address a question to both of you. Let's see. Is a negative bias connected to leftovers in certain countries a reason for food waste? If yes, how can we fight it? Ludovica, what would you say?
That's interesting. I think Davide mentioned especially kind of the social norms associated to the leftovers. And so that means that for people close to us, leftovers are not so tasty to eat. And I can say, Davide, that this is true. And this is especially true, for instance, at restaurant level. But not in all the countries. That means for the Anglo-Saxon countries, like the use of a doggy bag is absolutely normal. Like for some part of the world, like in the Mediterranean country, few years ago, I would say, asking for a doggy bag was a kind of still a stigma in some way. So people were ashamed to ask for it. But now the good news is that things are changing. So also in countries like Spain, Greece, or Italy, where before, just a couple of years ago, I would say, or 3 years ago, asking for a doggy bag was kind of a shaming because for the status of the people or for social norms, we were ashamed to ask for it. Now it's not anymore the case for most people, and also for the upscale restaurant now they are offering doggy bags.
True. Philippe, would you like to add something to that?
No, I completely agree with Ludovica. I think if you saw in the news maybe last week or even this week, Spain basically released a new legal framework that basically suggested that it is going to become illegal for restaurants to throw food away and to also make sure that they offer doggy bags. And exactly like Ludovica says, to really break that bias that leftovers is something that you should still be able to value. I think one other bias, and I think maybe that ties a little bit to leftovers as well. And I think if you, for example, I lived in Thailand, I lived in China, and there you also have this tendency of always ordering more than you actually want. And that it's actually a sign of prosperity and something, that you care for the people and you always cook more or you always buy more. And that has always caused a lot of food waste as well, because that's ultimately also a leftover from your meal. And a lot of that and all of that is going to waste ultimately. So even there, the Chinese government also decided that people who do leave something behind are actually getting fined, and that's not something that people should be proud of and something that should be getting out of the cultural aspects as well. So we're moving in the right direction in that regard.
Okay, we now have another question from Federico. It's a question for Philippe. Did you have any chance to talk about alternatives to the full shelf policy adopted by supermarkets as cooperations, I guess?
No, that's a very good question. And I think the way you also asked that, Federico, with Co-op is actually an initiative that we did with Co-op in Sweden specifically. So I can give you one example here, is that there was one supermarket specifically that had a huge amount of bread prepared every single day, where they started noticing, all of that bread becomes stale after one day, so they had to throw it away. And yet they were always thinking, we have to have that range of bread because it's attractive for the eye. It needs to have this full shelf policy in a certain way. So what we created there for them was these kind of stickers, which basically had an image of bread. So if you from far away, you would never even notice the difference. You would think, oh, basically that's bread, but actually it was an image. So it wasn't the items that were part of it. It was just a few items, and then beneath those items were pictures of bread. And that ultimately led to a lot of people believing that they were full shelves, even though they were actually half empty. And we have seen that created a massive amount of impact. I don't remember the exact numbers now, so I cannot quote it, but we definitely saw the amount of food waste in terms of bread going down in that supermarket drastically. So there are some tips and tricks that you can do around it to really play with people's eyes and people's perspectives. And that was a good example.
Thanks, Philippe. Thanks. We have a question for you, Ludovica, from Nastasia. I hope I pronounced it well, Nastasia. How to advance faster enough, apart from raising awareness, showing cases, etc.?
So great question. I would say, first of all, we talk a lot about companies and consumers. I would say we absolutely need also the institutional involvement. So we need food policy in order to tackle the phenomenon. And I can tell you, I am from Italy, we have a very important law against food loss and waste, but there are many others, as also Philippe says, in Spain or in France. So people need also the government help in order, for instance, in Italy, we have a debureaucratization of for supermarket or retailer or food producer that decide to redistribute food to people in need. So first of all, I would say this, and then also some behavioral part. So there are some researchers that says really simple tip in order to avoid food waste, especially so at consumer level. I can mention just some to make it quicker. So why restaurants are always putting like the full plate instead of asking if clients want the half portion. So half portion can really help in reducing food waste. And similarities like this, so it's important to go shopping with a grocery list, and it's important to plan our meals, if possible, on a weekly basis in order to avoid food waste. So both, I would say, the institutional part and the simple tips in order to avoid the food waste. And this is especially true, of course, at consumer level.
Thank you, Ludovica. Now, Philippe, your turn. We have a question from Linus. Can you introduce the company's plan in the US market? Any differences in the US versus Europe when it comes to your go-to-market strategies and just in general? Wow, complex question.
Oh, that's a good question. So yes, of course, there's differences. When it came to the European Union and for us to scale our solution, what really allowed us to scale and really expand that quickly was that there is a common legislative framework for opening up new businesses, opening up new offices that really helped us to go from one place to the next. The US is very, very different. Only to even get a solution up and running in the US is very different. I would say that's the first thing. Consumers think differently as well. I think that's important to know as well. It's a very different cultural aspects as well, which we have to tap into as well. There's different social aspects of this which to keep into account as well. Food insecurity is extremely high, for example, in the US. So there we are working very, very closely as well with food banks and food donations as well to make sure that they have enough food as well to go to food insecure people. So there's different aspects that we definitely have to keep in mind for the US. The way we expanded in the US is rather than going for the entire country straight away, we went by city, very strategically, first in the east and to the west. Now we're going Midwest. We're now in many different cities across the different country. But it is very strategic the way we go about it. And there's different aspects of how we do this.
Thanks, Philippe. Ludovica, there's a comment for you from Alessandro. He's referring to something you mentioned before. Very interesting that you mentioned the two countries with the highest obesity rates worldwide as the two countries wasting the highest amount of food. Yes.
Yes, indeed. I can tell you it is very important. There is a question. I have 3 kids, so I I will buy right in a moment the book of Too Good To Go. And the question is sometimes, do I offer them like food that probably at first they will not eat, like fruit and vegetable, and maybe they will waste? Or will I continue to feed them healthy food and, be prone maybe to some food waste? And the question is, yes, we have to continue because, of course, our healthy eating is fundamental. And what I can tell you is that if we continue, the neophobia of kids will disappear, and immediately they will eat everything. So all the fruit and vegetables or things that maybe they do not like, and the question of food waste disappear. So of course, we need to teach kids not to waste food, and at the same time instill the healthy habits. And I agree, sometimes, as Philippe said, the abundance of food and sometimes the abundance of junk food is not a good, it can be a factor that lead to more food waste. And this is also a problem of portion size, as I mentioned before.
Absolutely. And talking about kids, one last question from Yetunde. Yetunde, hi, first of all. I want to know what the name of your son is, by the way. She's saying, my son is here with me also. He's asking, what's the ultimate goal of Too Good To Go? Philippe, that's for you.
So the ultimate goal, of course, for Too Good To Go and also for me in my life is to achieve a planet with no food waste. That is definitely our calling. That's why we exist. That's our purpose. It's going to take a long time. We're far away from being able to reach that. But ultimately, it will not be enough to just have one solution as Too Good To Go. It will not be enough by just providing technology. So we are expanding our wings. We're trying to raise awareness for it. We're trying to collaborate, trying to talk to politicians, etc. So it really needs more than just Too Good To Go to be able to counteract it. But at the same time, we really want to be that authority, that voice, similar to what Ludovica is doing with her research to really echo, the need to really do something about this issue. And that's really what we will continue to do so. And hopefully we will continue to expand further and further in different geographies. And that is really much what we are trying to do as Too Good To Go.
Thanks, Philippe. I would just add up to that the ultimate goal is fighting food waste. Of course, you are food warriors, as your t-shirt says. So that's a great way of seeing you guys. So we've almost come to the end of our session together. I want to thank both of you, Philippe and Ludovica, for being with us. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been very insightful, mostly. So hope to see you again very soon, and wish you both good luck with your future projects. Yes, so hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you, Sveva, and thank you, Philippe. It was a sheer pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much. Really good seeing you. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Ciao. All right, so I hope most of you had the chance to get their questions answered. If not, you can try to send them to me by email, and I can see, I'll forward them to Philippe and Ludovica. And as for today, I think we've come to the end of this open talk. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope to hear from you soon. As you can see, yes, if you want to scan the QR code to find out more about the course, you can do so, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions about it. Lastly, if you want to stay updated, make sure you check the emails after the event, because some surprises, including the recording of the session, will be available to you. So thanks for being with us once again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.